Right. So, Pearl, tell me, what's the mind body relationship like in life? Like how do you think through this duality, mind and body?
Hey Aslam, that's a very big question and a very big ask to kind of explain it. Um, but just to put it very briefly, like what you said in the end is like how to explain the mind body duality.
Hmm.
I would say that premise itself is something that we need to question. The premise of mind body duality. And
Interesting.
yeah. That's a conversation we were having right before we decided to shoot this.
Yeah, we thought we were having some interesting thoughts, so let's capture these thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this was the thoughts we were having about, like this the scripts that the society, the culture, the generations have passed down to us about this mind body duality, because now that we are understanding, because earlier when people would talk about mind body relationship, it would sound very philosophical, like if I would talk to somebody about mind body relationship, then yeah, okay, this is spirituality, this is philosophy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
However, now as we are progressing with science and research in psychology, we are discovering that there's actually no duality. It's all
No.
one. And now we have a lot of research, and somatic psychology is emerging as a very significant branch of
So
psychology.
may I check? So
Somatic.
if you were to
Somatic comes from the word soma,
Soma.
and soma is from the body.
Hmm.
So the somatic psychology is emerging as the latest cutting edge branch of psychology, which believes that the issue is in the tissue.
The issue is in the tissue. I like
Yeah,
that.
the
Wow,
issue is-
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and so we're finding that connect between the mind and the body, and that they're not two separate things, that we have to treat the work with the mind separately and work with the body separately. I would say if we work with the body, we are working with the mind, and as we were talking earlier, we are all the time expressing ourselves through our body, right? So if we are joyous, we are smiling and laughing, which is through the body. If we are depressed or sad, we are shrinking in our bodies and in our breath. And if we are angry, we are making fists and we want to go at somebody, And so I don't know of any time when we're not talking with our bodies.
Interesting. Do you make a distinction between the mind and the brain? Like, so the brain and the body could be seen as like, I don't know. I mean, there is a philosophical conversation, as you mentioned, by Rene Descartes. His idea of Cartesian dualism. So he makes, which has been critiqued, right? This distinction between mind and body, where he says mind is an immaterial thing, like the thoughts, the imagination that come to us, right, or that we have, is it doesn't necessarily have. I mean, that is one argument. It doesn't necessarily have a basis in material reality. But then there is a critique of it, right? Like when you go through pain, or when you have certain ideas, certain parts of your brain will lighten up, or those kinds of arguments are there. But do you see mind and brain as two different things, or they?
That's a very important question, Aslam. Like, I'm not very familiar personally with Descartes' work, but I'm going to take a step back and from his argument, and I pick up on the word separation that you use, that mind and body are separate entities. Give me a moment. I just would like to close the window. There is a lot of noise coming in.
Yeah, of course.
Audio won't be very clear.
Please be patient with us.
Yeah, thank you. So to resume that conversation, so I'm going to take a step back from there, and I'm going to talk about this whole idea of separation in itself. And I will again take the support of both physics and science as well as philosophy, because from times immemorial, when we go into ancient civilizations, and we've, like, you may take upon things like yoga, qigong, or Sufism, and we've heard about things like that everything is connected and it's all one. We've heard of oneness and all that. Again, we've kind of attributed it to some kind of abstract ideas, like of something that is there, and then there's a life to live, right? And we've created that separation. And as I was saying, so I'm going to borrow, like I said, from science, and now quantum physics is actually telling us that everything is connected. Right, so there is actual evidence that there is no separation. Even the ideas of separation of an individual from his environment are things that are figments of imagination.
Interesting.
Because we are all part of the same system.
Same what system?
We are all part of the same system.
Oh, I see. Okay, the same system. Yeah.
In fact, there's a beautiful thing I read about connection, and it's like, it's not only that we are. So first, let me finish this thought. But so this idea of separation is actually what creates the dysfunctionality in thinking.
Interesting.
That we are separate from the mind, is separate from the body. We are separate from each other. So it's me against you. It's mind against body. So we are creating these against. I against this. This against
we
this.
Against the world.
We against the world. Yeah. So it kind of begins from here, right?
From
this whole idea of A against B. It begins from here. The mind against the body.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I guess like from philosophy to physics to biology, we talk about how if you look inside the human body, everything is connected, like cells are moving from top to bottom. If you look at the universe, everything is connected. So I think the idea of separation is a human creation and the basis for a lot of problems in the world. And which is kind of perpetuated by a lot of politicians for their own reasons. So yeah, that's my thoughts about separation.
Interesting. Okay, and you were saying something else also before the mind-body separation. Well, no. While you were talking about it, you had a thought that came up.
Yeah, if it comes back, I will definitely bring it to the table. Right now, it's kind of gone out there.
It's gone. Okay. No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you the thought. The thought is basically like how we are part of the same system, the human beings, and the thing that I read about, so that interesting thing I read is that, so human beings are based of the same elements that are found everywhere in the world. So if you take out the human being, we find the same elements, whether it is iron or magnesium or other zinc or other metals. And we find them everywhere on the planet. Everything is made of these elements, right? And these are elements that were created from the rocks, which were created during the Big Bang billions of years ago. So when we say we are made from stardust, it's not a philosophical thought. It's a physical reality. We are made of stardust,
And it's interesting to someone who studied biology and physics and chemistry until 10th grade, and that also in a form which was not very well informed, or in the way you understand science or teach science. So, to my mind, it's almost inconceivable, right? This idea that, although I describe myself as an empiricist, a desperate empiricist. Until there is evidence for things that make sense to my mind logically, then I believe. But I'm very tempted to it. But I also, it's like, how could that be? There is that. The idea that life started from stardust. Yeah. But there's also the idea that we come from the ocean, right?
And oceans were created. There was a Big Bang. there's a theory of the Big Bang theory of creation is like there was a Big Bang, and then the world, the galaxies, the universe was created, the galaxies were created, and Earth came, and then water came, but it all started from the Big Bang.
I see.
Right? And
Okay.
so then that's what, yeah, we all came for the oceans also. We also came from the stardust, right? It's all, both are equally true. And to talk to your empirical nature and the analytical nature, this, I would say that's what is of importance today, is that we have a lot of evidence from physics and from biology about these things. So they don't. That's the point I'm trying to emphasize. The point I'm trying to emphasize is that these things are no longer abstract ideas of philosophy, even though great philosophical minds have spoken about them from the beginning. But that separation that we created in the society between philosophy and everyday life, and
You mean the biological or the physical?
yeah, like not only biological and physical, but this philosophical idea of oneness or other ideas, and we're like, oh, these are the ideas are nice to listen to, but then there is the real life to live, right? And but so what for me is fascinating that today, through the physicists, leading physicists are actually doing a whole lot of research, and this is proving to be more and more true. As we are studying the human body, we are finding more connectivity inside the human body. As we are studying physics, we are finding that in quantum physics, everything is more connected than we ever thought to be, right? So the ideas of separation are not real.
I wonder where, and when, of course, there is, life, before I pose the question, there is the universe or life before life, our life, the human life, and other lives, which is you could say, you can box that for a moment, but then okay, we emerge, we come on the scene, and then we create history and society and structures and politics and governments and so on, and now we are in that moment where we feel like we can just do anything, right? We can conquer, we can cut trees, we can, destroy the world, we can drop bombs, we're doing all kinds of things. As if we are, we're entitled to, like, right? These as our rights. And before I digress, I want to arrest my thought and come back to like, I think this is something I've been thinking about, this relationship between the individual and society, or nature even, like are we, because this is a question, you can see in philosophy and social theory, right, and in other disciplines, like, are we part of nature, or are we independent of nature? And so nature is one, and then you have social structure, which I think we could distinguish from nature, right? So yeah, how, and I think these both are very interesting, right? Like, so the individual in relation to nature, the individual in relation to history and society and culture, or structure, if you may. So how, I don't know, does that make sense?
Absolutely, these are very, very important questions to ask, and I would say that we should encourage everybody to ask these questions, because we need to question the fundamental things about life, about, especially when you talk about, especially about our education system, like, what are we learning? Yes, there is knowledge, but there is a bigger knowledge, there's a bigger picture, right? And when you talk about nature, and social scientists, I don't know who these social scientists are, but as you're saying, that they talk about that, are we part of the nature, the question you asked, right? And I think we already addressed that in the previous discussion that we had about, like, how we are part of the oneness. We have the same metals, we have the same elements. If you look at it, you and I am breathing the same air. There is no separate air for you, no separate air for me, or no separate air for the plant, or no separate air for the animals. It's the same air. We all stand on the same ground, and we are all the time exchanging all of this. We are exchanging the air between us, we are exchanging the ground, like something decomposes, animals decompose, plants decompose, they go into the earth, they go into the soil, they become fertilizer for the soil, from that grows plants, or the other animals eat that and we eat that. So it's all part of the same cycle. So where do you create that separation?
So the separation would be, okay, there is a complication that I want to introduce. Again, in social theory, the idea that, well, first of all, what is nature, right? There are different ways of defining it.
Right.
For me, I think, put simply, nature is that which remains untouched by the external human action. So, like, if you're walking on, for example, this ground is not natural because it has already been acted upon. But if we, let's say, go to a forest and we see a part of a piece of a land which has not been dug or not been done anything to, so you could say that that is natural, right? So in a way, yes, we're part of nature, but the argument also is that we're also independent of it. We're independent of it because we connect to it. I mean, look at the world, right, that we have created. I mean, cities and bridges and dams and so on. And probably for our survival, I think one of the conditions is, or one of the preconditions is for our ability or technical rationality or to be able to, maybe not so much now, or even now, like what do you do with floods? What do you do with extreme cold? What do you do with extreme heat, right? Humans have been able to like intervene in nature for self-preservation. But I think probably in the process, humans have lost the balance, right? So it's now not only acting upon nature for self-preservation, but conquering it. And in the process, I can also probably see the separation as like widened. Now everything, I mean, that people living in the world, like if you see, I had this tendency, and I'll shut up. I met a friend once who was studying frogs. So my first question was, how is this important for humans? And she was like, what's wrong with you? You know, why do we have to study other animals too? Just for, you know, with the motivation as to what it can do for us humans. Does that make, you know?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So does that make sense?
Yes, but I just feel that we are covering a whole lot of ground here. We are, I mean, yes, it's all very fascinating and it's all part of the universe and it's all connected. However, there is the whole and there are the parts also, right? There is a big picture and then there are the parts of the picture. But just because the parts are there doesn't mean that they're not part of the whole. Right? So there may be a human being and there is this whatever other things, you know, we talk about, you know, and they may be parts of a bigger picture, but the bigger picture is the universe, right?
Yeah.
The bigger picture is the universe. The bigger picture is that bigger nature. If we talk about things left untouched, that's the big universe that we are part of, right?
Sure.
And we are only a small piece of that.
Yeah.
So.
And in that sense, we are like part of the bigger picture, right? We include it. So that,
yeah. So and when we look at it from that lens, I still don't know whether we are acting upon it or are we being acted upon. I don't have that idea. But within this particular environment, which we call Earth, definitely we're acting upon it, right?
Right.
We have agency. So it's like, while we are part of a bigger world, we do have agency over certain things, right? And I guess that's again this process that we are both being acted upon and we are acting upon simultaneously.
Yeah, and I like this idea of like, I think, yeah, I do have a tendency of like posing to myself these questions would almost seem impossible to like, to kind of wrap one's head around, you know, but I guess to like then reduce it or focus it on our everyday life. How does it come up in your work on mind body, you know, this in terms of like human being who wakes up every day and starts their day and then, you know, does the work, or if they have a job, or come back home and think through life. In like, does that make sense? What is you think a more what is I know it's different from person to person, but what do you think is the best way or the most effective way to think through this? I don't know if that makes sense.
I will share the most recent things that came to my mind in my coaching session. That not my mind, but which came up, which emerged. They always emerge. So, like, I was talking to somebody, and they said that drag themselves out of bed in the morning. I was like, hey, let's take a pause. So you drag your body out of the bed every morning, right? And what does that do for your mind? Because now you're losing the language. Oh, I drag myself around, I drag my mind, you know. So
That's
so,
a good one, okay?
right? So you're dragging your body and you're using that language, so you end up mentally dragging yourself around. So there is no, I don't see the separation in this case between mind and body, right? And I was talking to another person the other day, and we were talking about things like sadness and grief and what that does to the body. Like when you have thoughts that make you sad and grief, you're like, okay, find your ground, find your breath, and how does it feel? And the person was feeling good. And then we introduced a sad thought, and what does that do to do for you? What does that do to your body? And immediately the body was shrinking. And then I'm like, okay, now think of a desire. And suddenly the person was thinking about, oh, how do I go after that desire? How do I achieve this? When will this happen? And again, losing that breath and that expansiveness that we have access to in this moment. So in the context of my work, I focus on the human potential in terms of mind and body. What is our potential and what is our best efficiency? How can we put our mind and body to the best use in this moment?
Do you think people are, sorry for interrupting,
No,
do
go
you think
on.
people are more in their mind than in their body? Or
People are thinking a lot, but they cannot be more in their minds than in their bodies because they're expressing to their bodies, even though they may not be aware of it. They may not be aware of it, they may not be connected to it, but they are living through their bodies. So it's a way of saying, oh, you're disconnected from your body, but it's like you're not really sensing. You're not really staying aware of what's happening in the body. The body is always working, right? But yeah.
how many times, I don't think enough people, including myself, like pay attention to my hands or my feet and being grateful for like what they do. I mean, this seems like well, it sounds strange because I think we haven't made it common to think like that, because like it's like until we meet someone like you, then we realize like, oh shit, I haven't even paid attention to my hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Try gripping your hands and see what happens to your mind. And then soften them and release them and notice what happens. I feel like when I grip my hands, my whole body kind of tightens up. Right? This is that anger, this is that fight mode, right?
That kind of makes sense.
And
when you also like roll up your sleeves.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the giving and receiving mode. We open our hands, we keep our hands tender. The giving and receiving. I'm in open exchange with you because I know we are connected, right? I'm not separate from you. I'm connected with you. The giving and receiving mode.
Yeah, and yet we live in a world and we are in the United States. I mean, pretty much you go to any country at the moment to find citizens from different factions and blocks and ready to beat each other up or even kill each other. So like, I mean, that the idea that we're part of each other, we're connected, and in some universe, I don't know, eternal sense or in some spiritual sense, but yet the state of the world is so that I mean, of course, there are many countries and many places and many cities and which probably we don't hear of, on the news, but then we also have things in front of our eyes where, what do you think needs to happen more and more?
I think it's a tragedy. It's and a tragedy and a necessity, both. I would say that it's a tragedy that has been passed down from generations, and also being kind of imposed by the rich and powerful, maybe out of ignorance or whatever reasons.
Or
Uh,
greed?
or greed, whatever reasons to, or
Big money?
big money to control the minds of the larger people, to keep them in a state of very diminished thinking, in the states of trauma, like I would say that, and so they don't have the resources and the bandwidth to think about beyond what has troubled them, you know. So that is the tragedy, but that's also the reality is also, and I would say that's also part of reality, because it's part of the human evolution. So as a race, we are exploring, we are experimenting, and we are growing, and we are understanding with each generation. So I would say that, like, more kids have access to therapy now than they ever had before. Psychology is kind of evolving. We have more branches of psychology, like somatic psychology now. We have philosophy, physics, everything is kind of evolving, right? So, and I like to believe personally, it's my personal belief that human race is still very young. The planet,
Yeah.
the planet is very old, billions of years old, and the human race is very young, and civilization is what? 100, 200 years old.
200?
I mean, the new modern age civilization.
I see.
Science, what we call modern science, is still very young. And we are still we are beginning to explore and experiment, We are here on this planet to explore all the wonders and what possibilities. And that is just kind of begins. So we have a long way to go. So we've done pretty well to have arrived at this place, and we are continuously expanding our awareness and our understanding,
Yeah.
as individuals and as collectives.
What would you say to people who would counter this optimism with what they call, in the US, you have probably in other places too, these terms called toxic positivity or something like that. I think even in positive psychology, when we, of course, remind people. I mean, I'm not personally. I think it's a great point of view, to think, just like we talk about countries and we think of them as young and yet to learn, yet to grow, and it makes a lot of sense to think about the human race in those terms too. But how would you?
Well, I would say, first of all, whenever I hear a word, I'm like, first of all, okay, what does it really mean to me? What is the meaning of the word? The toxic positivity.
The toxic positivity.
And what do these people really mean when they're saying toxic positivity? Because I like to base my ideas on evidence and data. So, like, my ideas of oneness are not based on some flimsy, abstract imagination, but I'm based on data and evidence on what is of maximum efficiency to me. Because when I have ideas of when I feel well about my life, about myself, I'm able to perform better in the world outside.
I see.
It gives me energy to work, it gives me fuel to work, it gives me a sense of empowerment. And so it energizes me. So I look at ideas from the lens of two lenses. One lens is like data and evidence. The second lens is this energizing me or is it draining me?
Interesting. In your mind and in your body.
Yeah. Does it give me like the sense of feeling good and empowering me and telling me, oh, this feels good and this feels empowering and this is something I need to do, or is it something like draining me and I'm feeling like, I feel powerless. So,
I see.
like, yeah. So I think, and that is another problem of that's another problematic reality of the world, and I have grown up with that myself. And it comes from the way parents treat their children, it comes from the way societies treat individuals, it comes from the way bosses treat their employees, it comes from the way The rich treat the poor, creating the sense of powerlessness in the society and within individuals through our traumas, through suppression, and how can I? And that sense of powerlessness doesn't serve me, doesn't serve anybody. So how can I transition from that state of powerlessness to a state of empowerment, where I can make informed choices about my mind, about my body, and about my society, about my community. And I can only do that when I can bring love, healing, innovation into the world. When I'm in that state of empowerment, when I feel powerless, then I'm only spreading despair.
Do you think the mind and the body, since you treat them as one entity, probably with different functions, but they are essentially interdependent. Do you think they have, as a dual, not a dual, but as two in one sort of like interdependent entity, have the intelligence to tell us whether the feeling that we have based on a thought or our imagination of the social and the political and the world around us, does it have the capacity and the intelligence to detect or to tell us whether it is a just thought or a just imagination, and so we should be happy about it and just and treat it as so? Because the reason I'm saying this is that we could find people who have like probably really bad ideas, but they are kind of like okay about it and they just go on with their lives, So does that make sense? And then like before, I think probably we started this conversation here, recording this also. One of the things that came up was like this: do we know the difference between like self-care and self-deception? Because I think the internal world, the silent internal world, is like so impenetrable and imperceptible that sometimes you don't even know how to describe it to yourself. Like, do we really know this thing that we're thinking about is necessarily? The even the whole notion of like the conception of the good and the bad is very questionable. But in whatever limited capacity we can think of it, we can construct a view of the world within ourselves, within our minds, and then feelings, having certain feelings, right? Like some people are angry at the world, other people are like fine. As my friend yesterday, or 2 days ago, we were having this conversation. It was like anger, if it is rooted in love, it's good.
Yeah, and we had that conversation yesterday also, and we spoke about how anger gets a bad rap, but it's a very useful emotion because it contains a lot of information about our wants and needs, about our space, about our boundaries, and about any previous traumas that we might carry within ourselves. It's a great opportunity, but it just gets a bad rap. So the idea is to convert that anger into something useful rather than just carrying it.
Yes.
Like how can I convert it into something useful? What is it trying to tell me?
Yeah, so besides the anger, the self-deception, or like the self sort of like, does the mind, I don't know if the question even makes sense. Does the body have the capacity and the intelligence to tell us like this?
We have to work with the tools we have at hand, and it's like we have this present moment, and we have the tools that we have at hand, and the tools that we have in our hand is our mind and our body, and the question and the fact is they're not separate. You cannot distinguish between the two. They're part of each other. The mind is the brain, that which is called the brain is here, but our nervous system is all over the body. So the mind is like getting information from all over the body, sensing through our feet, sensing through our hands, sensing through my back, sensing through my buttocks, and collecting all this information and giving me spatial information about my place in the space right now.
Interesting.
Right? My eyes are collecting information from the environment around me. My ears are collecting information even from this conversation with you. And together it's kind of synthesizing all this information. And these are my tools. And so I cannot afford to ignore the body. Right? In this vast, uncertain universe that we were talking about with the galaxies and everything else, these are my tools. Right?
Yeah.
And I cannot afford to ignore these very tools. And this is like, again, from times immemorial, from the times of the ancients, they have said that the only way I know I exist is breath, and I'm breathing. The minute I come into this world, I take my breath as breath. The moment I leave this world, I take my last breath.
Last breath.
Right. I die, I take the last breath, right?
Oh,
so,
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I am because I'm breathing, I am in this body.
Not because I think therefore I am. That's probably a counter.
I think I don't agree with that, but I think I breathe so I am. I breathe so I am. And so we cannot afford to ignore this. There is a lot of information in our bodies, stored in our bodies, which we are just beginning to explore. And, like, for example, our bodies are made of musculature and bones and tissues and ligaments. And when these are tight, when I'm not using my body properly, my spine is compressed, my neck is going like this. And all these are like information highways. Our nerves are information highways. So when my neck is not connected between my head and my rest of the body correctly, the information pathways are like blocked. And the flow is not happening properly. Right? The flow is not happening properly doesn't only have a physical ramification. It has a mental ramification. It means that all parts of my brain are not actively working. So the integration is only part. So the more I create this harmony between mind and body, the more parts of the brain get activated, more information highways start working, and more integration can happen.
Interesting. So one last question, and then we will wrap it up. And the conversation to be continued, not discontinued. Discontinued.
We can discontinue this to continue something else.
Discontinue, for tonight. But you said we're evolving, right? As human beings, we're new, and there's a lot of information stored in our minds and bodies, and we have yet to. Hope I'm not putting more words in your mouth, but this is how I understood. But what is interesting is that yes, we are evolving, but at the same time, we often find ourselves, or I find myself, like going back to old books, right? You'll go back to Rumi, you go back to some ancient thinker, and so on, and it's like. It's fascinating. 2,000, 3,000 years later, 2,500 years later, you're kind of like, not that Rumi was 2,000. I mean, Socrates, Plato, and other people. Is that wow? It's fascinating. Like these people wrote about us, and ancient scriptures and so on, right? I don't know. I mean, it tells me like, wow, there is probably like the internal architecture, the emotional and the I don't know, the psychological and the spiritual architecture, it seems to me, has remained the same, which is why we go back to these people from like 3,000 years ago. Or maybe there is no such thing as time. I don't know why, like the 3,000 to 2,000 years like make it seem like, oh, this is like that long ago. Probably time just is. Time doesn't really time is not something that is in the past or today or tomorrow. It's our relation to it that changes. I don't know. Does that make sense? So like for our own sort of understanding, like we still refer back to people who wrote about human nature, like hundreds of years ago.
Well, first of all, yeah, time is a whole separate conversation that can take days.
Yeah, and
days, you
I
know.
by no means, I pretend to know. I think physicists and those who study time probably
Even they don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knows what time is, but
Yeah.
we just use it for convenience.
For convenience.
Yeah.
My way of seeing it is like, oh, there's no such thing as time. Like we just
Yeah, and we're free to have our own ideas because nobody knows for sure what time is,
Yeah.
right? But coming back to your other part, which was about if you were to ask your whole question in one sentence, what would
The
that
question was, why do we? Okay, so I had this idea the other day, is that like, are we more wise than our ancestors? Right? If we were wiser, we wouldn't probably refer back to their ideas from like 2,000 years ago.
Okay, what comes to my mind and
the,
what
the connection to even human evolution, like in
yeah.
how
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would say that again, it's a question nobody knows the answer to. We all
Yeah,
theorize, and I, like I said, for me personally, my lens is like the data, and the second is like, is this empowering me or disempowering me, right? In this context, when I think about it, because a lot of people like they really romanticize the past, you know, like, oh, life was so good 100 years back, or when my grandparents' time and all. And sometimes when I think about my grandmother's life, I think it was a life full of struggle. My grandmother had to work really hard, and she was married to a patriarch, and so it wasn't that her relationships were great, like we tried to romanticize. Oh, there used to be community, and relationships were great, and this was there, and that was there. I tend to have my doubts about it, seeing my grandmother having been married to a patriarch, and the kind of struggles she had to go through, physical struggle because of lack of conveniences and access. So I feel very grateful to have been born in this current period, you know.
Sure.
And about the wisdom, I don't know who is more wise. These are very relative questions, you know. But I would like to say that our knowledge is not new. We are building on the knowledge of the past. Every generation just builds on top of that.
Of course.
And like we discussed throughout our conversation today, that philosophers from times immemorial have been talking about this idea of oneness, about separation being the illusion. That we are all, the illusion, the trap that we are all caught into. You know, there's a word in Hindu literature, it's called Maya. Maya means illusion, that everything is like an illusion, you know. And I feel, to me personally, that separation is an illusion, because the more and more the science kind of develops, the more we are finding out that it's more unified than we ever thought.
So, or maybe science has its own limits. I mean, the limits of rationality, you know, like science, reason. I think there is a whole movement in the scientific realm, this post-modernity, the idea that modernity, that we could explain everything through science and reason is itself limiting, right?
Yeah, and there is so there is science, and then there is human intuition and imagination.
Sure.
And when you refer to people like Rumi and other scholars and great minds from that time or across generation, a lot of them are talking from intuition, from first-hand experience, which is also through the body, and that's where we come to the body, because the body has a direct way of knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
A body has a direct way of sensing. We are bypassing the thinking. Of course, there's a thinking involved. We cannot, again, separate thinking from sensing. But now we are coming from the root of sensing, from the root of embodiment, rather than thinking. But because a human being is so caught up in the mind, that we want evidence, data, mental kind of evidence data for that, and not our direct experience of things.
Interesting.
So Rumi spoke about direct experience, and what is that direct experience? It's through a body. It's our true ability of sensing things, and that's what we are here talking about. That we do have a body, and we can use it to sense, but for some reason we have to choose to ignore it, or to kind of dismiss it, or just to sculpt it into a particular shape and form to create a statement, but not really see it as a medium of great wisdom.
Yeah, and to probably end this conversation today. You said, I breathe, therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, that's
Is
life.
that your sentence, or I'm just, or because I wanna, I'm not trying to put you on spot or anything, but I'm just, if when I'm going to post it,
Mm-hmm.
if you allow me, then I'm gonna, yeah.
Uh,
Or you
I
like some-
don't know who. I don't know if somebody said it before. I have no idea. But in the moment, it's come instinctive to me.
Okay.
I have in my own book also. I have written about breath, but yeah,
It's a powerful idea.
yeah,
It's a beautiful idea. I think it's the, you know, I wouldn't say a counter to I think therefore I am. I think that is there fine, right? But
Yeah.
it should also be balanced out with I breathe therefore I am. So there is these both
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
continue.
There, yeah. But I feel that if we had to look for evidence for life, it starts and ends with breath, right?
That is, yeah, that is
So-
powerful. Yes.
And and breath tells us about the state of our mind, state of our emotions. Whenever emotions change, whenever our mind changes, our breath changes. So breath is a great indicator and great evidence of what is happening inside our mind body container in this moment.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you.
Thank you so
We-
much, dear Aslam.
of
It was
course.
a pleasure talking to you.
And we'll continue the conversation.
You definitely.
Awesome. I think therefore I am. We'll end on that. We'll see you guys again. Bye.